Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're just going to be talking about some really good books. I am curious, first off the bat, I have this category of book that is basically what I call a 4-star book, and I want to know if I'm alone in this kind of vibe. And today we're going to be talking about books that I put into this category and ones that I would recommend you to read if you like this kind of thing. Sometimes I don't want to be super into a story. I don't want it to be a 5-star, blow me away, my emotions are played with, everything is twisty and turny and great and amazing. Sometimes I just want to read a mediocre book. And I hate using the word mediocre because none of the books on this list are mediocre in any way whatsoever. But I want to read a book that is pretty straightforward, pretty fun, pretty good, but something that I'll think about for a long time, I'll think is really fun, and I'll rate a solid 4 stars. And I don't think I'm crazy. I think that's something that a lot of people want, but maybe they just don't realize it. I genuinely don't want every single read that I have for the rest of my life to be 5 stars. And so I have actually made a list of my favorite 4-star books that I have ever read, and we're going to be talking about a couple of them today, and I'm going to recommend you some. And if you guys have any recommendations for some that you think I should check out, then by all means drop them down below. None of the books on this list are a 4.5, a 3.75, a 4.25, nothing of the sort. They are exactly a 4-star. 4-star in my mind means that I really enjoyed the book, but there wasn't anything necessarily shocking about it or nothing that stood out as like incredible, oh my god, unique. I didn't necessarily have my emotions played with, and I didn't necessarily like fall head over heels in love with the book. There was nothing I felt was necessarily wrong with the book, and I would recommend it and read it again. I read almost all of these through audio. There are a couple that I physically read. I don't necessarily have all the ones that I physically read. Some of them I borrowed from the library, but I would recommend almost all of these through audiobook. I find that when I'm in that mood for just kind of like I just want to read a book and I want to enjoy myself, but I don't want to be super invested, I really enjoy putting an audio on. So I do recommend that you check out almost all of these audios if you're interested in that. The first one up we are going to be talking about, and this is funny because I actually have 2 on this list by this author, and that is going to be Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. The other one that I'll be talking about after this one is going to be Replica by Lauren Oliver. So Before I Fall is kind of like a contemporary sci-fi. It's basically a fun twist on Groundhog Day, where this high school aged girl goes to a party, is in some type of horrible accident, and then wakes up the next day at the beginning of that day, and she relives that day 7 times. And over the course of her reliving that day, she starts to realize that she can change that day and she can affect it, and that she can make things a little bit different, but she can never stop herself from waking up the next day, living that day once again. The book does leave it open-ended at the end, so if you're not a huge fan of that, then that's not something for you to read. But I really enjoyed watching this girl connect with her, I believe it was her sister, a lot. I enjoyed watching her learn about the world that she was in and try to figure things out. I felt like it was a pretty predictable story. We understood from the beginning what was going to be happening, what was going on, where it was going. But I feel like Lauren Oliver is a really good writer. I like how she writes. It's easy to read and it's simple to get through, and she's not out there writing things that are genuinely problematic. Now with Replica, this one is a really fun book. This is the one where you can read it from either direction, and there are 2 different stories. So if you read it from this way, it is Lyra's story, and if you read it from this way, it is Gemma's story. It is a very unique book. So the way I chose to read it, and it is recommended online by a few people to read it this way, is I would read a chapter of one and then flip over and read a chapter of the second one. And it is about these 2 girls, one of which is growing up in this scientific study on this island, and she is a clone, and there are like a bunch of these girls here, and they are being studied for medical reasons. And then the other girl, and of course I can't tell you which is which right now, is the daughter of a rich man, and she doesn't think that her life is quite what she thought it was going to be. And it is the story of these 2 girls connecting with each other and figuring things out and trying to understand what all is going on. There is a sequel. I feel like this one wrapped up pretty perfectly, and I've never felt the need to continue on with the sequel, but I do have this on my shelf because I think this is such a cool novelty book, like being able to read it from any direction, and I would genuinely read it again. Another one on this list is Fever Dream. This is a newer book, and I did read this somewhat recently on my channel. The author is Samantha Schweblin. This is a very short, weird horror book, and it's not necessarily super horrifying, but it is super weird, so prepare for that going into it. I feel like if you've read the title, Fever Dream, you kind of know what exactly you're going to be getting from a book like this. So if you don't want a book that feels like a fever dream, don't read this book. But if you're absolutely okay with that, then this is a great mind-twisting book that is pretty short. It's going to leave you feeling satisfied, and you're just going to have a fun time with it overall. We are following a woman who is in a hospital bed, and she's being talked to by this young boy, and he's asking her questions about how she got there and how she met his mother and some other weird things like that. And we're going back through her memories and seeing kind of how we got to the present day storyline. And there's all these different connections between the different women in the stories and this little boy and how he like connects to the different things. And it had this really, really cool concept about children who are sick, and there's this medicine woman who can transfer that sickness to another child, but the child that you get left with is not quite your child still, and how it leaves people kind of not quite right. And so there's this constant feeling of like things aren't exactly how they're supposed to be, and things are a little bit weird. Maybe things need to be fixed. Next up is Zeros by Scott Westerfeld, and to be completely honest, I would also throw Uglies by Scott Westerfeld on this list, but I didn't put it on the list when I was making it because I felt like I already had too many books. But either of those series by him I think are a solid read, and I really enjoyed reading both of them. So I read Zeros when I was in college though, and I read Uglies when I was like at the appropriate age. I think I was like late middle school, early high school. Zeros is the one we're going to be talking about. If you want to know about Uglies, you can go and research it if you don't already know about it. It is a pretty popular dystopian story, but Zeros is about a group of superheroes, and they all have these weird abilities, and they're all being hunted by the government, I believe it is, for different reasons. I just remember feeling so absolutely satisfied with all the different personalities. I felt like they were such well-rounded characters. I enjoyed the story. It is a trilogy. I read all 3 books. I think I rated all 3 books a 4-star. I might have rated the last one a 3-star. I can't totally remember off the top of my head, but it's just kind of a fun twist on a superhero story. It reminded me a little bit of a younger Vicious by V.E. Schwab. If you've read this book, you know that it is kind of like a little bit more morally gray. I think that Zeros kind of fits into that category where you're going to have a lot of morally gray characters who disagree with each other and who butt heads with each other, but overall it's not as dark as that book is because it is definitely targeted for a younger audience, like not a young audience, but I would say probably somewhere in high school, whereas Vicious is definitely a little bit older than that. I really enjoyed this book, and I've been wanting to reread it for like the past 2 years now. I just have not had the time to fit it into all of my reading and everything. And I remember when I learned the powers of the different kids, because there's a few of them that you're following, feeling like pleasantly surprised because some of them were very unique abilities. The next one up is Roar by Cora Carmack. I read this book twice, and the first time I didn't like it as much as the second time, which is always shocking to me, but I reread it in preparation for the sequel coming out because they are free on Audible if you have an account, and I will probably reread both of them in preparation for the 3rd book coming out, which I believe it's coming out next year. And they are a YA fantasy romance series, which I feel like, coming from me, I never rate them high. Like if I rate them a 3-star, that's good. So for me to have rated this series, I think I rated book 1 and 2 4 stars, and to think about them fondly and to reread them really says something. But basically what we're following is a princess who is in this family of magic users, and everyone in this family, they're royalty, and they have the ability to control storms, and storms have these hearts, and they want to collect these hearts in order to like power the city and do different things. And our young girl is preparing to be queen, and she's very smart, very beautiful, very capable, but she seems to have no magic, and so she is worried that her family will either do away with her or cover her up or something like that. So she goes on the run with this like rebel band to try to find herself, figure things out, figure out if something is wrong with her, or try to find her magic, whatever she needs to do. I feel like why I liked this book is it wasn't quite as predictable as I thought it was going to be. There is definitely a love interest, and it is definitely very obvious who the love interest is going to be from pretty early on in the book, but I liked our main character. I didn't find her super annoying, and I feel like she was genuinely smart and making smart decisions out in the world, and I really liked the magic in this world. It felt different because you do kind of have this like storm control, but there are different types of storms and they can hit at any point, so you could just be like wandering around and like a snowstorm could hit randomly, and then having also the element of like the storm hearts like be part of that was a really fun aspect. And then also getting our main character to learn more about her world and her family and figure out like what is actually going on was great. I also really loved the ending of book 2, and I feel like they did such a good job with the villain in book 2. He's not a huge part of book 1, to be completely honest, but he's definitely there, and it's definitely a trilogy that feels like it needs to be a trilogy. A lot of times I feel like trilogies don't need that second book, don't need that middle filler, and this one I genuinely think she did a good job of. Book 1, you're meeting the characters, you're setting up the world, you're understanding everything that's in it, and then book 2 is setting up more of a problem on top of those other issues that we had, and then book 3 is going to be hopefully the resolution. Up next I have The Last Damn Sarah, which was a book I actually read with my book club, and so I do have some tabs on the side of it, as you can see. This is a desert fantasy where we are following this girl, believes that she is the reason why like half the city and her mother have passed away, because she can tell stories, and when she tells stories she attracts dragons, and a while ago a dragon attacked their city and killed tons of people, and so her father and a bunch of other people blame her for this occurrence. So she is a dragon hunter. It is called an Iskari, I believe. She has to go off and kill these dragons, but her father believes that she's not doing a good enough job, and so he wants her to stop, and he puts her into an arranged marriage with this horrible man, and he says, if you do not destroy the big bad dragon within so many days, and it's a very short amount of time, you will have to marry this man and you'll have no choice in the matter. One of the things I really liked about this book was there are these like storytelling elements throughout, and it's the stories that the girl or the dragon are telling. And when you get to them, they are darker pages, and they help open up the world in a new way. I don't know how well you can tell, but like that page is a lot darker than this page, and those stories really feel like old-time fairy tales and are just beautiful. The writing in this was absolutely fantastic. I probably would have rated this book a 5-star if it hadn't been for the like last third of the book. Just kind of like let me down a little bit. But I do highly recommend this book. I want to read you the opening sentence because it's one of my favorite opening sentences that I've read in a book in a long time. And it goes, Asha lured the dragon with a story. It was an ancient story older than the mountain at her back, and Asha had to dredge it up from where it lay deep and dormant inside of her. And then the rest of the book is basically the story that she told. Up next, I have The Grace Year, which is a really fun dystopian kind of, I don't want to call it a witchy book, but it's kind of like a witchy book. Every single year, this small village takes all of the girls who are about to be 16 years old and sends them, I believe it's for the full year, into this isolated campsite. And the reason they do this is because they believe that girls, when they go through puberty, harness magic and can control these crazy abilities and do this weird stuff. And so they send the girls there to use up their magic. And then once all the magic is gone, they can come back and live inside society and be gentle wives and calm mothers. And it's such a good feminist tale, and it's such a good story, and it talked about some really important things in it. And this one was a really good one, guys. I even said, I'm looking down at my review right now of it, and I said, this is a really conflicting one. Hopefully I'll be able to explain one day in a review. And then I never came back and actually reviewed the book. Our main girl basically doesn't believe that the magic is real and that the girls are hallucinating everything or making it up to like seem cool cool and to seem more mature for the other girls, for their future husbands, for whatever. And she wants to be free, and she doesn't want to be a wife. She wants to basically work in the fields her whole entire life, but she has been chosen for wifehood. A weird mix. I'd say the closest combination of the two books I can compare it to is like if you took the Hunger Games and you mixed it with Wilder Girls, which is such a weird, like they're opposite ends of dystopian, but they really, like, that's what I would describe it as. Up next, I want to talk about Foe by Ian Reid. So he is the author of, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. No, it is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Okay, I'm losing it. Foe is much more of a Twilight Zone thriller horror. It's not necessarily a scary horror like I'm Thinking of Ending Things is. It's more of like a psychological horror where you're just not sure what's going on. It's very suspenseful, and it really quite literally reads like a Twilight Zone or a Black Mirror episode. I think it would do a fantastic job as like a short in one of those shows. But it is about this couple who get told that the man has been chosen to go to space, and he'll be gone at space for, I can't remember how long, but it's for a few years, and that they are going to come to the farm because these people live in isolation, and they are going to watch them for the year leading up to the man leaving for space. And you get to follow the couple in that year leading up to when he is supposed to leave, and you get to watch him slowly descend into madness as he just believes that the people watching him aren't there for quite the right reason that they said they were going to, and that he doesn't believe he's actually going to, I think it's Mars that he's supposed to be going to, and he doesn't trust his wife anymore. He thinks they've like swapped her out, and he doesn't think that everything is as it should be. It's such a weird, good book that has such a good ending. I did read this for my 5-star prediction reading vlog, and I talk about it a lot more in depth there if you want to know more about it. Up next, we have specifically the sequel to The Sixth World. The first book is Trial of Lightning, which I rated a 3-star. The second book is Storm of Locusts, which I rated a 4-star, and I fully believe that when the third book comes out, I will rate it a 5-star. Like, they've just been phenomenally getting better. These are by Rebecca Roanhorse. She also wrote, I can't reach it, but it's Black Sun, and I think she's a phenomenal writer. I love her inspiration and her stories and everything, but one of the things that I really liked about the Sixth World series more than I liked about Black Sun is how strong the Indigenous own voices writing was in this book. I feel like it's shown so much stronger and so much better. So this is in a post-apocalyptic world. We're still kind of going through an apocalypse, but we're definitely on like the other end of an apocalypse. And we're following this young woman who lives in the desert, and she is a monster hunter because she basically has the strength of her tribe. And so what's happened is in this world, the old gods came back and they blessed their native tribes with certain abilities. And so basically how it kind of seems to be, and I might be a little confused about this, is it seems that the rest of the world is gone and it is only native indigenous peoples and maybe a select few other people who have barely survived through this like reckoning that has come. But I also definitely remember there being mention of a wall, so there might be people living outside of this reservation type area. Our main character, like I said, is a monster hunter, and she is awful, and she is mean, and she is strong, and I really like her as a character and as a person. And there is a great love story. There is a romance, and I think it's done so well, and I think that they really build up on the chemistry and do a really good job with it. And she is such an unlikable person, and I just really enjoyed following her and getting to know more about her magic and the person who she's interested in his magic. Storm of Locust really does expand the world a little bit more. I feel like the writing got better. I feel like the characters got more well-rounded, and I feel like the story just developed in such a way that it was so good and so enjoyable. And I'm actually just now, as I'm talking about this, starting to realize that most of the books on this list are dystopians, and that might be saying something about me. They're not the only ones on this list though, so we can keep going. Up next, I have Race the Sands by Sarah Beth Durst. If you're looking for a epic standalone fantasy book, first off, almost all of Sarah Beth Durst's books are that, exactly. She does have some series, but she writes a lot of fantasy standalones, and she writes a lot of fantasy standalones about women who are not teenagers. So I've read a couple of books by her, and I think every single one that I've read by her, the main character has been a woman over 30. I can't remember exactly how old they have always been, but they have always been over 30. We've had a couple of moms, I know for sure. In this book, we do have a mom specifically. She just does a great job, and I know that's something that people look for a lot, and so I always want to mention her when I am going to be talking about those kinds of books. So Race the Sands is about two women specifically, but you do get a little bit more of the world than just these two women, and it is about, one is a trainer, and the other one is going to be a racer. And so they of course have to team up together for reasons because they need each other's help. Trainer is going to get her daughter taken away, so she needs to train someone who will win a race so she will have enough money to take care of her daughter. And then the racer is from a rich family but wants to get out on her own and not live up into those standards and that lifestyle. They race on monsters. They race on these horrifying, like the front cover has, as you can see, like this lion that's like metal and it's got like a mace for a tail. They're not racing on horses, they're not racing on camels, they are racing on monsters, and it is such a fun story. If you were a big fan of the Scorpio Races by Maggie Steve Otter, I recommend. Those two are like pretty similar to each other but just very different. Like one is very wet Irish Isles and one of them is like very desert setting, so like they're opposite settings but like similar kind of ideas. Up next we're going to be talking about Velocity Weapon. I did read this one recently on my channel as well, so you might be kind of familiar with me talking about it because I really liked it and I kind of won't shut up about it. But it's a really good book and I highly recommend it. It's about two siblings who are fighting this war, and because of an accident they are separated through time, and the boy is left in like the present timeline, which is way in our future, and the girl is sent 300 years in the future, and it is about them learning about the war from opposite ends of the war. It is about isolation and friendship and learning about people who are different from you, and it's just a really, really enjoyable book. If you're a good fan of space opera and crazy AIs and things not being exactly as they seem, this is a good one for you to check out. After that, we have A Song of Wraiths and Ruin. I really liked this book. It's another YA fantasy romance where I felt like they genuinely did a good job and they twisted and turned enough and it wasn't super stereotypical, and so I liked what was said and what was done. We're following two different characters. One is a princess and her mother died and she is being sent to be the next ruler, and so she believes that if she does this ritual where she kills a very specific person that she can bring her mother back. The person that she's supposed to kill is our other POV, and he believes that if he kills her, he can save his sister's life. So it is both of them. It's him going through a trial to try to become like the king of the realm because she has to marry someone in order to like become a queen. And it is about both of them kind of trying to get him to win the trial, trying to be buddy-buddy without knowing that both of them are trying to kill each other. And it was just really fun and really enjoyable. I have not read the sequel yet. Honestly, I'm a little bit nervous to pick it up because I've just heard a few things that it's not quite as good, but I genuinely want to reread this one and then go on to the sequel at some point in my life. Up next, I'm going to be talking about Autumn's Tithe, which was a book that I found on TikTok and I really, really enjoyed it. So in this book, it is a YA fantasy romance again, and it is about this girl who every single year there is this tithe and a fae comes to their city, their town, and picks a girl between certain ages and takes that girl back to live with him and live in the life of the fae. And if the city gives up the girl, the family gets all this riches, they're protected by the fae, and all they have to do is give up one girl, so why does it matter that much, right? The year before this one, our main character's best friend was taken, and so she has convinced herself that she needs to be taken this year because it's her last year, because she believes that her best friend is not actually doing well and is not safe and that something is wrong. And so it is about her, really the trial happens in the first 2 chapters, I believe it is, so most of the story is about her interacting with the fae and trying to figure things out but it was done in such a way that I was really unexpected and I didn't see it coming. Things were not straightforward and as they seemed. There's a huge twist multiple times throughout this book. There is going to be a sequel. Right now there is only the first one out, but I don't know how many books in the series. I think she said 3. The Fae are just diverse, interesting, well-rounded, and I really loved their banter and their interactions with each other. And whenever an author can make me feel a certain way about what happens to characters, I have to say bravo. Finally, the last one we're going to be talking about is a thriller, and it is Never Saw Me Coming. I did read this on my channel for another video. I think it was my only reading thrillers for a week video. And this is about, specifically, we are following a girl, but there are a few different POVs, and she decides to go to this college so that she can hunt down and stalk the boy who did something horrible to her. I won't tell you what it was, and she wants to kill him. Now, the way she gets into this school is she gets a scholarship because she is considered a psychopath, and the university wants to study her, so they are going to give her a free ride if they can study her and have her like take these tests and everything. And so she goes to the school with a free ride and plots the death of this boy. There's a lot more that happens in this book, but I don't want to get into it completely, but it does kind of have like that fun college vibe. There's a little bit of smut. There's a lot of mental health representation, whether or not it's good or bad. I definitely recommend checking out trigger warnings for this book before you go into it. I actually really enjoyed this book, and this is another one that I would have rated a 5-star if the ending had been different. But unfortunately, the ending was done in such a way that I didn't love it. So 4 stars it is. So that's it. That's my list of books that I think if you just want some good books, these are the ones you should check out. I don't have anything else to say. I hope you're all doing well. I don't remember how my outro goes, but until next time, I'll talk to you in the comments. Bye!